There's a secret to success that's older than any industry, more powerful than any degree, and more valuable than any fortune. It's the ability to make people feel seen, respected, and understood. In every room you walk into, in every conversation you have, there's an invisible game being played. The game of influence. And those who master it aren't the loudest, the smartest, or the richest. They're the ones who understand people. That's what Dale Carnegie discovered when he wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't born famous. He was a small-town boy who struggled with shyness and insecurity. But he became one of the most influential teachers in human history because he learned the one truth most people miss. If you can make people feel important, you can open any door. Now imagine walking into a world where every opportunity, every friendship, every job, every deal depends on how people feel after meeting you. That's the world we actually live in. You can have the best idea, the sharpest plan, or the deepest knowledge, but if you can't connect with people, you'll always hit invisible walls. This book is the roadmap through those walls. It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding human nature so deeply that people want to listen, trust, and follow you. And once you master it, everything changes. Because whether you're talking to your boss, your spouse, a stranger, or a crowd, you're not really dealing with logic. You're dealing with emotion. Let's uncover the principles that make people open up, listen, and remember you. The timeless lessons that turned ordinary men and women into magnetic leaders. The first principle: don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Think about the last time someone criticized you. Did you feel motivated to change, or did you feel attacked? That's the irony of human nature. We believe that criticism corrects behavior, but it almost always triggers defense. When you criticize someone, you don't change their mind. You just harden their heart. Carnegie saw this truth everywhere, from boardrooms to marriages. He realized that even when people are wrong, what they crave isn't correction. It's understanding. Abraham Lincoln learned this lesson the hard way. Early in his career, he would write fiery letters to opponents, mocking their ideas. One day, a duel nearly took place because of one such letter. Later, when he became president, faced with national division and hatred, he changed. He stopped writing with anger and started leading with empathy. He famously said, "Don't criticize them. They are just what we would be under similar circumstances." Lincoln learned what Carnegie later taught, that understanding human weakness isn't softness, it's strength. If you can stop judging people and start trying to understand why they do what they do, you'll start to see patterns that help you respond wisely instead of react impulsively. People are driven by needs, to be respected, valued, safe, and seen. When those needs are threatened, they fight back, even when they're wrong. So when you stop condemning, you do something rare. You create space for honesty. That's how relationships heal. That's how influence begins. The second principle: give honest and sincere appreciation. If criticism poisons connection, appreciation heals it. But here's the secret: people can sense fake praise from miles away. Carnegie wasn't talking about flattery. He was talking about genuine gratitude, the kind that sees what others overlook. There's a story of Charles Schwab, one of the greatest industrial leaders in America. When asked how he got the best out of his workers, he said, "I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people the greatest asset I possess. And the way to develop the best in a person is by appreciation and encouragement." He used praise not as manipulation, but as motivation. He didn't say, "Good job," casually. He made people feel seen. And when people feel seen, they rise higher. Think of how you feel when someone genuinely appreciates your effort. Not the result, the effort. Something in you ignites. You want to give more. You want to be better. That's what appreciation does. It transforms behavior without force. So the next time you want to influence someone, don't start by telling them what's wrong. Start by showing them what's right about them. The results will shock you. Because people rarely work for money alone. They work for respect. They work for recognition. They work for someone who believes in them. And when you learn to give that kind of appreciation sincerely, you become someone others want to follow, not someone they have to obey. The third principle: arouse in the other person an eager want. Every person is tuned into one frequency, WIFM, what's in it for me? That's not selfishness, that's survival. Carnegie realized that the fastest way to lose influence is to talk only about what you want. The fastest way to gain it is to align what you want with what they want. That's what every great communicator does. When Apple launched the iPhone, Steve Jobs didn't say, "We've built a phone with advanced processors and glass touch." He said, "We've reinvented the phone." He spoke to the feeling people wanted: simplicity, magic, power. When you speak the language of desire, not instruction, people lean in. So before you ask someone for anything, their time, their help, their attention, ask yourself, what do they want most? Then show them how your idea helps them get it. That's not manipulation. That's empathy applied to communication. It's what every successful leader, teacher, and entrepreneur eventually learns. You don't push people, you pull them by aligning with their deepest wants. The secret behind these three principles. All of this points back to one core truth. People are not driven by reason. They're driven by emotion. If you can understand their feelings, you can guide their behavior. Carnegie's genius was in seeing that human nature doesn't change. Technology changes, culture changes, but the desire to feel important, appreciated, and understood will always be universal. He didn't write a book about manipulation. He wrote a guide to empathy. And once you apply it, the world begins to respond differently to you. People open up. Opportunities appear. Conflicts fade. Because when you master the art of connection, you don't just win friends, you win trust. And trust is the foundation of influence. Part 2, the magnetic effect. How to make people instantly like you. There's a saying, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in others than you can in 2 years by trying to get others interested in you. That line isn't motivational fluff. It's the essence of how human connection works. And Carnegie didn't just preach it. He proved it through countless real stories. He understood that most people are not bad communicators because they lack words. They're bad communicators because they lack focus. We go through conversations thinking of what we'll say next, not what the other person is saying now. That's why most people don't listen. They wait to talk. But the ones who make an impact do the opposite. They listen like every word could change their life. Let's break down the 6 laws of likability that Carnegie revealed, each one as powerful today as when he first wrote them. Law 1. Become genuinely interested in other people. Imagine walking into a room where someone asks about your story, your dreams, your passions, and actually listens. They don't interrupt, they don't drift away, they lean in. How do you feel? Seen, valued, important. That's what genuine interest does. It awakens something human and ancient in us. Carnegie said, you can make more friends by becoming genuinely interested in other people than by trying to get other people interested in you. The key word there is genuine. Pretending to care doesn't work. People sense it instantly. But when you truly care, when you're curious, your energy changes. When a young employee once asked Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, how to rise in business, he told him this: talk to people about themselves, and they'll listen for hours. He wasn't joking, because every person's favorite subject is themselves. That's not vanity, that's identity. So when you ask questions, listen deeply and remember small details, a person's birthday, favorite food, or their kid's name. You create a sense of connection that no amount of money or power can buy. And here's the beauty. When you show interest in others, they start becoming interested in you. Not because you demanded attention, but because you gave it. Law 2, smile. It sounds so simple it's almost dismissible, but a genuine smile is one of the most powerful tools of influence. A smile is a universal language. It crosses class, culture, and circumstance. Carnegie wrote, actions speak louder than words, and a smile says, I like you. You make me happy. I'm glad to see you. Think about that. A smile is silent approval, silent warmth, silent friendship. And it's contagious. There's a story about a department store clerk in New York who made more sales than anyone else, not because she was pushy, but because she smiled sincerely at every person who walked in. Customers returned to her not for the products, but for how she made them feel. That's the real secret of service, business, and leadership. People don't remember transactions, they remember emotions. And no emotion is more magnetic than joy. When you smile, you're saying, "You're safe here." And that's all anyone wants to feel in a world full of cold faces. So smile, not the fake kind that fades fast, but the kind that comes from genuine warmth. Because a real smile doesn't just move lips, it moves hearts. Law 3. Remember that a person's name is, to that person, the sweetest sound in any language. In a world where most people feel invisible, remembering someone's name is like shining a light on them. Carnegie understood that names carry identity. They're more than words. They're recognition. He told of a manager who could recall hundreds of employee names, from the janitor to the vice president. When people asked how, he said, "I take a mental photograph the moment I meet them, because their name is part of who they are." That simple act made people loyal to him for life. It's not about memory tricks, it's about mindfulness. When you meet someone, focus entirely on them. Repeat their name naturally. Write it down if needed. When you say someone's name with warmth, you're saying, "I see you." And in a world starving for acknowledgement, that's priceless. Law 4. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Most people think being a good conversationalist means being interesting. Carnegie flipped that idea completely. The best conversationalists are the best listeners. When people feel truly heard, they walk away saying, "That person was so interesting, even if you barely spoke." That's the paradox of communication. You win people's hearts not by impressing them, but by understanding them. Carnegie once attended a dinner where he hardly said a word. He simply asked questions and listened attentively. At the end, his dinner partner said, "You're one of the most fascinating men I've ever met." He smiled quietly. He hadn't shared a thing about himself. That's how powerful listening is. When you let others talk about their work, their problems, their dreams, you give them a rare gift, validation. You make them feel their thoughts matter. And in a world where everyone's shouting, the listener becomes magnetic. Law 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. Every person lives in a world of their own interests. If you can step into that world, if you can see through their eyes, you can connect instantly. Carnegie told of Theodore Roosevelt, who mastered this art beautifully. Whenever he expected a visitor, he'd spend hours studying subjects that person cared about: hunting, naval history, agriculture, whatever mattered to them. When they met, Roosevelt would bring up that very topic. The result? Instant connection. He didn't try to impress them with his own knowledge. He connected through their passions. That's how you make people feel understood. Because when you speak about what matters to them, they feel you understand what matters to them. And the truth is, that's all influence really is, making people feel seen in their own language. Law 6. Make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. If there's one emotional need that outweighs all others, it's the need to feel important. Every person, from the CEO to the cleaner, wants to feel that their existence matters. When you make people feel that way sincerely, they remember you forever. Carnegie wrote, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." There was once a janitor in a New York office who was always cheerful and motivated. When asked why, he said, "Because the company president greets me by name every morning and thanks me for keeping the place shining. No one's ever done that before." That man didn't need a raise. He needed recognition. And that's the secret. People will give their best not for the money, but for the meaning. So when you see someone really see them and acknowledge their effort, you create loyalty that no paycheck can buy. Each of these laws builds on the other. You start with genuine interest, reinforce it with warmth, connect through identity, and deepen it through attention and respect. That's not social etiquette, that's emotional intelligence. That's the currency of real influence. And the most beautiful part? None of this requires status, looks, or power. Anyone can practice it. The shy student, the quiet worker, the introverted dreamer. They can all become unforgettable simply by caring more than others do. Because while most people are trying to impress, the truly influential are trying to understand. And that's what makes all the difference. Part 3. The art of gentle persuasion, winning people to your way of thinking. Have you ever met someone who always gets their way, yet nobody ever feels forced? They make people want what they want, but you walk away thinking it was your idea. That's persuasion in its highest form, not coercion, but cooperation. Carnegie believed that influence wasn't about dominating others. It was about guiding them with respect, empathy, and understanding. He said, "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." You can win an argument, but lose the person. You can prove you're right, but end up alone. And in business, love, or leadership, that's never a victory. So, how do you win people to your way of thinking without ever arguing? Let's explore Carnegie's timeless principles. 1. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. It's ironic, but true. The moment an argument begins, persuasion ends. When emotions rise, logic drowns. Carnegie understood this long before psychology proved it. When someone feels attacked, their mind shuts down and their defenses go up. No reasoning can penetrate. So he advised, don't argue. That doesn't mean you agree with everything. It means you find higher ground. Instead of saying, you're wrong, say, I might be mistaken. Let's look at the facts together. This subtle shift turns conflict into collaboration. A classic example comes from Abraham Lincoln. In his early career, Lincoln used to write angry letters to those who criticized him. Sharp, cutting words. But after losing friends and allies, he learned restraint. Later, as president, when an officer made a grave mistake, Lincoln drafted a furious letter and never sent it. He left it in his desk. Historians found many such letters, unsent, unmailed, but powerful reminders that silence can win wars words never could. Avoiding an argument doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. Because persuasion doesn't happen through resistance, it happens through rapport. 2. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say you're wrong. Few phrases shut down communication faster than you're wrong. It doesn't just challenge someone's idea, it challenges their identity. Carnegie advised that even when others are mistaken, you should never attack their position directly. Instead, use diplomacy. Say things like, I may be wrong, let's look at it together. I understand how you see it, here's another perspective. These small phrases keep the conversation open. Benjamin Franklin, one of Carnegie's heroes, once said, I will speak ill of no man, and speak all the good I know of everybody. That approach made Franklin one of the most persuasive figures of his time, because he understood people are not logical first, they are emotional first. If you crush someone's pride, they'll fight you no matter how right you are. But if you protect their pride, they'll often join you. And that's the subtle art of influence, protecting ego while guiding understanding. 3. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. This may be the hardest principle, but it's also one of the most powerful. When you're wrong, don't defend, disarm. Own it. Carnegie told of a businessman who once overcharged a client. Instead of waiting to be confronted, he called first and said, I owe you an apology. I made a careless mistake on your invoice. I take full responsibility. The client was so impressed by his honesty that they not only continued doing business, they referred others to him. Admitting fault doesn't weaken your credibility, it strengthens it. Because humility is magnetic. People expect defensiveness. When you admit error, you flip the script. Even in relationships, this works wonders. A simple "you're right, I messed that up" can end a fight faster than hours of explanation. Because in the end, people don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be human. 4. Begin in a friendly way. Carnegie often said that a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. In other words, friendliness beats force every time. When you start an interaction with warmth, a smile, a kind tone, or a small compliment, it softens resistance immediately. One example comes from a New York traffic officer who often dealt with angry drivers. Instead of yelling, he'd greet them with, Good morning, sir. I'm sure you didn't realize how fast you were going. The tone disarmed them instantly. They rarely argued. Why? Because friendliness dissolved their defensiveness. It's the same in business and leadership. Warmth creates willingness. Start cold and you invite conflict. start kind, and you open cooperation. 5. Get the other person saying yes, yes immediately. Carnegie borrowed this idea from the psychology of momentum. When someone starts saying no, they build mental resistance, but if they start saying yes, their mind stays open. So he taught, begin conversations with small agreements. Find common ground first. If you're discussing a new idea, start with things both of you can agree on. For example, we both want this project to succeed. We both care about our customers. Each yes builds a rhythm of agreement, and by the time you reach your main point, resistance is low. Modern salespeople still use this principle. It's not manipulation, it's psychology. The human mind prefers consistency. And when you guide someone through small truths, they're more open to seeing the bigger truth. 6. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. The best persuaders are often the quietest, because people trust their own conclusions more than yours. So Carnegie taught that instead of arguing or explaining endlessly, ask questions that let the other person express themselves fully. He shared a story about a man who had trouble getting cooperation from a colleague. Instead of pushing harder, he said, "Tell me what you think we should do." The colleague spent 30 minutes explaining his view, and in the process, he ended up convincing himself to support the very plan he'd resisted earlier. That's the secret. When people talk, they think, and when they think, they move closer to truth. So if you want people to adopt your idea, let them discover it themselves. 7. Let the other person feel that the idea is theirs. Nothing motivates like ownership. When someone feels they created an idea, they'll defend it fiercely, even if you planted the seed. Carnegie used this often in business negotiations. Instead of dictating a plan, he'd ask questions that led others to suggest what he already wanted. When they did, he praised their insight. And because the idea came from them, they took pride in making it succeed. This principle builds partnerships, not hierarchies. It's how great leaders lead. They don't impose, they inspire. As Lao Tzu once said, a leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, they will say, "We did it ourselves." 8. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. This may be the golden key to all influence, empathy. When you can step into someone's perspective, you no longer argue. You understand. Carnegie believed that understanding is the root of harmony. He said, success in dealing with people depends on a sympathetic grasp of the other person's viewpoint. Even if you disagree, you can still validate how they feel. Say, "I can see why you'd feel that way." That phrase alone lowers emotional walls instantly. A powerful modern example is found in customer service. The best representatives don't start by defending policy. They start by acknowledging feelings. I understand how frustrating that must be. Only after empathy do they explain or solve the issue. And that's why customers leave happy, not because they got everything they wanted, but because they felt understood. 9. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. Empathy must be expressed, not just felt. People need to hear that you understand. Carnegie urged his readers to say things like, "I would feel the same if I were you." These words bridge emotional distance faster than logic ever could. He told of a salesman who turned angry customers into lifelong clients simply by acknowledging their frustration first. He didn't argue, he sympathized. And once emotions calmed, reason returned. That's persuasion through compassion. Because when you soothe emotion, you unlock reason. 10. Appeal to the nobler motives. Carnegie believed every person, no matter how hardened, has an inner sense of goodness. If you appeal to that rather than to fear or greed, you awaken their better self. For example, instead of saying, "If you don't fix this, we'll lose money," say, "You've always cared deeply about doing the right thing. I know you'll want to handle this perfectly." It's subtle, but it calls to pride and integrity. Carnegie recounted how a store clerk once caught a young boy stealing. Instead of scolding him, the man said gently, "You're much too fine a boy to do something like this." The boy returned the item, tears in his eyes, and never stole again. That's the power of appealing to nobility instead of shame. 11. Dramatize your ideas. People rarely act on logic. They act on emotion and imagery. Carnegie suggested turning ideas into vivid experiences. If you're proposing something, don't just tell, show. He told the story of a salesman trying to convince a business to install a fire sprinkler system. The manager wasn't interested. So one day, the salesman quietly set a small piece of paper on fire in the manager's office trash can, safely, of course. The man jumped up, startled. The salesman calmly said, "That's what can happen when you least expect it." The system was installed the next day. Today, we'd call that storytelling marketing. The lesson is timeless. People don't remember data, they remember drama. Make your ideas felt, not just heard. 12. Throw down a challenge. When all else fails, challenge people's sense of achievement. Carnegie observed that humans have a deep desire to prove themselves. When you turn a goal into a friendly competition, you ignite motivation. He shared how Charles Schwab once boosted productivity in a steel mill by simply writing numbers on the floor. He asked a night shift how many units they produced. They said 6. He wrote 6 on the ground. When the day shift saw it, they wanted to beat it. So they produced 7. The next night produced 8. Within weeks, output skyrocketed. Why? Because the challenge awakened pride and purpose. That's influence, not through pressure, but through inspiration. At the core of these 12 principles lies a universal truth. You can't force people to change, but you can inspire them to want to. That's how great communicators move hearts, businesses, and history itself. Be a leader. How to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. Leadership is not about rank or authority. It's about the ability to move people toward a shared vision. And the greatest leaders, Carnegie believed, are those who make others feel valued while guiding them toward growth. He begins this section with a piercing truth. A person's name is to that person the sweetest sound in any language. But even deeper than a name is one's dignity. The moment you hurt someone's dignity, you lose influence, no matter your title. So how do you correct, guide, and inspire others without wounding pride? Let's explore Carnegie's leadership laws, timeless lessons that built relationships, companies, and legacies. 1. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. When you need to correct someone, start with recognition. Carnegie understood that criticism is often met with resistance, but appreciation disarms it. He said, "It is always easier to listen to unpleasant things after we have heard some praise of our good points." He told of Charles Schwab, one of the most successful business leaders of his era, who had an uncanny ability to motivate workers. Instead of shouting orders, Schwab would walk the factory floor and find something to praise. Even when production was low, he'd say, "You men are doing good work. I can see real improvement in the way you're handling that steel." The men would straighten their backs and redouble their efforts. Because praise awakens pride, and pride drives performance. Start every correction by recognizing what's right, and people will listen when you mention what's wrong. 2. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Carnegie taught that direct criticism often bruises the ego, while indirect correction preserves it. He shared how one of his associates used to correct employees by saying, "You did a great job on this, though if we adjusted this part slightly, it could be even better." Notice the language. The mistake is cushioned between encouragements. Even simple shifts like saying perhaps or maybe soften the tone. Instead of, "You're wrong. Try. Perhaps we could look at it this way." This keeps communication alive, not defensive. The great secret is tone. Influence is not just in what you say, but how you say it. 3. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. Carnegie said, "It is a lot easier to listen to criticism after the critic has admitted that he, too, is far from perfect. When you humble yourself first, you open hearts." He recounted how a father once scolded his son for neglecting his studies. Later, realizing his mistake, the father said, "Son, when I was your age, I often made the same errors. I know how easy it is to get distracted." That single act transformed the conversation. The boy no longer felt attacked. He felt understood. In leadership, this is priceless. When you reveal your flaws, others feel safe enough to grow past theirs. 4. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. No one likes to be commanded, but everyone appreciates being consulted. Carnegie advised asking questions to lead people subtly toward action. For example, what do you think would work best here? Could we try it this way next time? It gives people a sense of autonomy and respect. This principle shaped some of history's greatest leaders. Instead of saying, "Do this," they'd ask, "Can you help me with this?" Psychologically, that changes everything, because collaboration breeds commitment. 5. Let the other person save face. This is one of Carnegie's most compassionate principles. When someone makes a mistake, never embarrass them publicly. Give them the chance to maintain dignity. He told a moving story of General Douglas MacArthur. During World War II, a young officer made a costly tactical error. MacArthur could have humiliated him. Instead, he said privately, "This is a valuable lesson for both of us. I've made worse mistakes myself." The officer left inspired, not defeated, and later became one of MacArthur's most loyal aides. To preserve another's pride is to earn their devotion. Never take away a person's dignity to prove a point. It's too high a price for a short-term win. 6. Praise every improvement, no matter how small. Progress thrives on recognition. Carnegie said, "Praise is like sunlight to the human spirit. We cannot flower and grow without it." Even small victories deserve acknowledgement. He told of a manager who had trouble getting an underperforming employee to change. Instead of focusing on flaws, he began praising even tiny improvements. The employee's performance soared because encouragement fuels energy, while criticism drains it. In parenting, in leadership, in friendship, this law works universally. The moment you celebrate growth, you multiply it. 7. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. This principle is pure psychological genius. When you tell someone they are capable, honest, or diligent, they subconsciously strive to live up to that identity. Carnegie called it building a bridge of reputation. He told of a factory worker who was careless with tools. Instead of scolding him, his supervisor said, "You're one of our most careful men. I know this was just an accident." From that day forward, the worker became careful because he was trusted to be. This works because people will go to great lengths to be consistent with how others see them. So instead of tearing people down, build them up with the image of who they can be and watch them rise to it. 8. Use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. When people believe a change is possible, they attempt it. When they believe it's hopeless, they give up. Carnegie suggested saying things like, "You're improving fast," or, "With a bit more practice, you'll master this easily." It reframes the challenge as achievable. He told of a piano teacher who turned struggling students into performers simply by saying, "You have real musical talent. You just need to polish it." Those words gave confidence, and confidence unlocked effort. The same applies in business. Good leaders turn "you failed" into "you're getting closer." That subtle shift turns discouragement into drive. 9. Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. Carnegie ended his book with this, the final secret of influence. He said, "Always make the other person want to do what you suggest." How? By showing them what's in it for them. When people see how a task benefits them, growth, pride, purpose, reward, they act willingly. A clever manager doesn't just assign work. He connects it to meaning. Instead of saying, "We need to finish this report," he says, "If we can get this report right, it could open new opportunities for the whole team, including you." That changes the emotional tone from obligation to ownership. Because true leadership isn't about authority. It's about alignment. It's about making people want to contribute. And that's the essence of Dale Carnegie's wisdom. You cannot change people by force, but you can guide them by faith. Faith in their potential. Faith in their dignity. Faith that if treated with respect, people will rise to meet the best version of themselves. As you reflect on how to win friends and influence people, you realize something profound. This isn't just a book about communication. It's a book about humanity. It's about understanding that every person, rich or poor, powerful or ordinary, craves the same things: appreciation, respect, belonging, and dignity. And if you can give those, influence follows naturally. Think about it. When you avoid arguments, you protect peace. When you listen deeply, you win hearts. When you praise sincerely, you spark greatness. When you see others' perspectives, you turn conflict into connection. And when you lead with empathy, you create loyalty that lasts a lifetime. These principles built friendships that lasted decades, businesses that thrived, and leaders who inspired millions. Even today, in a world of noise, competition, and digital walls, Carnegie's teachings are more powerful than ever. Because while technology changes, human nature doesn't. People still want to be seen, heard, and valued. And if you master that art, you'll never struggle to influence anyone again. In the end, how to win friends and influence people is not about tricks or tactics. It's about a way of living, a mindset of empathy over ego, understanding over argument, connection over control. Carnegie proved that kindness isn't weakness, it's strategy. And in the long run, it's the most effective strategy there is. Because while others fight to be right, the wise learn to be kind. And the kind always win more than arguments. They win hearts. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and join us for more wisdom that fuels growth.